She was only a little girl when she first believed her voice could change the world. Most kids her age dreamed of playgrounds and summer fairs, but Taylor Swift sat in her room with a guitar almost too big for her arms, whispering melodies into the quiet air of a small Pennsylvania town. The strings cut into her fingertips. The sound wasn't perfect, but to her it felt like magic. She believed that if she could pour her heart into a song, someone, somewhere, would hear it and understand. Her parents noticed early on that their daughter wasn't like other children. She wasn't satisfied with just humming a tune or playing piano pieces from a lesson book. She wanted to write, to tell stories, to put her emotions into words that could outlive the moment. At school she was shy, often standing alone, her notebook filled with lyrics instead of math notes. Some kids teased her, saying no one wanted to hear about her feelings. Yet Taylor didn't let their laughter crush her. She went home, closed the door, and sang louder. The first real heartbreak of her young life came not from romance, but from rejection. At 11 years old, she traveled with her mother to Nashville, carrying demo tapes recorded in a small studio. Together, they went from label to label, office to office, and at every door the answer was the same. You're talented, but not what we're looking for. Each no felt heavier, but she carried it anyway. On the long car ride home, she stared out the window and whispered to herself, "One day they'll regret turning me away." Her parents believed in her dream more than anything. They made the life-changing decision to move closer to Nashville, so Taylor could keep knocking on doors that had once been slammed shut. At night, when fear crept in, she wrote songs about it. Music became her shield, her diary, her escape. She wasn't the strongest in sports or the loudest in class, but she had something inside her that couldn't be measured by trophies or grades. It wasn't easy. In a town filled with aspiring singers, Taylor was just another hopeful voice. She played at small venues, fairs, and coffee shops, sometimes to crowds that barely looked up from their conversations. Yet every time she strummed the guitar, she gave it all she had, imagining that one person in the crowd needed to hear those words. The courage to stand on those tiny stages built the foundation for the massive ones she would later conquer. One evening, after a long day of disappointment, she sat on the porch steps of her new home in Tennessee. The sunset burned orange across the sky, and Taylor held her guitar, close like a friend who never let her down. She wrote a song that night about chasing dreams even when the world doesn't believe in you. Her mother listened quietly from the doorway, tears filling her eyes, because she knew her daughter's heart was unbreakable, even if it bent under the weight of rejection. For Taylor, the dream wasn't about fame or fortune, it was about connection. She wanted someone to hear her words and whisper, "That's exactly how I feel." Deep down, she carried a certainty that if she kept writing, kept singing, one day her voice would rise above the noise. One day, the world would have no choice but to listen. And so, with determination burning brighter than the doubts surrounding her, Taylor Swift took her first steps on a journey that would be filled with triumphs, heartbreaks, betrayals, and victories. She didn't know what awaited her. All she knew was this: no matter how many doors closed, she would never stop knocking. The first time Taylor's voice reached more than a handful of strangers, it was at a small showcase in Nashville. She stood backstage, clutching her guitar so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her heart pounded louder than the crowd outside. But the moment she walked onto the stage, something shifted. The nerves didn't vanish, but they transformed into fire. She strummed the first chord, and suddenly the world felt quiet enough to listen. A local music executive in the audience leaned forward, captivated not just by the notes, but by the honesty spilling from her lyrics. He didn't hear a polished pop product. He heard a storyteller. That night, Taylor walked off stage exhausted but glowing. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. Someone important had noticed. It wasn't long before she signed her first contract. The ink on the paper felt like a door finally opening after years of knocking. Still, the reality was far from glamorous. She worked tirelessly, recording, rewriting, and rehearsing, spending late nights in the studio perfecting her sound. When her debut single finally hit the radio, Taylor sat in the car with her mother, holding her breath as the announcer introduced her name. The first notes played, and tears streamed down her face. Her voice wasn't just in her room anymore. It was out in the world. Her debut album didn't just sell records. It told stories teenagers across the country could recognize as their own. Songs about crushes, heartbreaks, and longing echoed through bedrooms and hallways. Fans wrote letters, saying she put into words what they couldn't. Suddenly, the girl once mocked for writing in notebooks was winning awards and standing on red carpets. But success came with shadows. Fame brought critics, and critics brought cruelty. Every outfit, every word, every smile was picked apart. Taylor was young, still learning who she was, and now the world had opinions about everything she did. Some said she wasn't good enough, that she didn't belong in country music, that she was just another pretty face. Each headline cut deep, but instead of answering back, she wrote. Her pain turned into melodies, and her resilience became choruses. Then came the night that would mark her forever, the 2009 MTV Video Music Awards. Taylor stood on stage, clutching her first Moonman trophy, her eyes wide with disbelief, her heart swelling with gratitude. She began to speak, her voice trembling, when suddenly Kanye West stormed the stage, ripping the microphone from her hands. In front of millions, he declared someone else deserved the award. The crowd gasped. Taylor froze. Her smile faltered, and the microphone was gone. The camera caught her standing small, stunned, while the world watched. She didn't cry, not then, but inside she felt the weight of humiliation pressing down on her. That moment could have shattered her confidence forever. Yet even as she walked off stage, shaken and silent, she made herself a promise. She would never let anyone steal her voice again. In the weeks that followed, something remarkable happened. Fans rallied around her, strangers defended her, and industry giants reached out to remind her she mattered. Taylor discovered that even in her lowest moment, her vulnerability made people love her more. What could have been the end became a new beginning. Her next album wasn't just music, it was a declaration. She poured every scar, every doubt, every triumph into it. And when it topped the charts, breaking records and winning awards, she realized she had done something far greater than prove Kanye West wrong. She had proven to herself that no humiliation, no insult, no setback could silence her. That night at the VMAs didn't define her. What defined her was how she rose afterward. Taylor wasn't just a country girl with a guitar anymore. She was becoming a voice for anyone who had ever been told they weren't enough. And deep inside, she knew the road ahead would bring even bigger storms. But now she had the armor, her music, her fans, and the unshakable belief that every wound could be turned into a song. By the time Taylor stood among the biggest stars in the world, she should have felt untouchable. Yet behind the sold-out arenas and flashing lights, she was learning that success doesn't silence loneliness, it only amplifies it. The higher she climbed, the more people waited to see her fall. Every relationship she had, every friendship, every smile captured by paparazzi became a headline. Instead of being celebrated for her music, she was dissected for her dating life. Tabloids painted her as a girl who collected boyfriends for inspiration, mocking her heartbreak as if it were entertainment. Strangers who had never met her decided they knew everything about her character. Each cruel word was a reminder that the world loved her songs, but often refused to see the human being who wrote them. Friends she thought she could trust betrayed her. Private conversations ended up in the press, twisted and weaponized. Rivalries turned into public spectacles. The internet, once a place where fans gathered to share love, became a battlefield of hashtags and accusations. Taylor, once fearless, found herself retreating, questioning whom she could believe, wondering if every smile in her circle hid a knife. There were nights she shut off her phone and sat alone in the dark, feeling like the world had turned against her. For someone who had always been seen as strong, the cracks inside her were widening. Depression crept in, and the pressure to keep smiling for the cameras felt unbearable. She thought of walking away, disappearing from the stage that once felt like home. But music was still her refuge. Alone with her guitar, she let the tears fall, her voice trembling as she sang to herself. Out of that pain came songs that cut deeper than anything she had written before. They weren't just about teenage crushes anymore. They were about betrayal, survival, and the loneliness of being misunderstood. When fans heard them, they didn't hear weakness, they heard truth. And once again, her vulnerability became her strength. Then came the feud that nearly broke her spirit. Accusations flew across social media, friendships shattered in public, and suddenly it seemed like half the world had turned her name into a punchline. Memes mocked her, headlines declared her career over. For a time, Taylor vanished. The girl who had once fought so hard to be heard chose silence. But silence wasn't defeat. It was rebirth. While the world speculated about her downfall, Taylor was rebuilding in the shadows. She reimagined her art, sharpened her vision, and prepared for a return that no one could ignore. When she finally reemerged, it wasn't with a quiet apology, it was with thunder. Her new music was darker, sharper, bolder than ever before. She embraced the image of the villain they had tried to paint her as and turned it into power. She sang not as the broken girl they thought they had destroyed, but as a woman who had survived fire and now carried its flame. The world was stunned. Fans roared louder than ever, arenas filled again, and critics who once dismissed her admitted she had created some of the most daring music of her career. Taylor didn't just come back, she came back stronger. And yet, even in her triumph, she never forgot the pain. She understood now that fame could never shield her from hurt, that trust would always be fragile, and that love could vanish without warning. But she also knew something greater. No matter how loud the voices against her grew, her own voice would always be louder. The storm had tried to drown her, but Taylor had learned to dance in the rain. When the storm finally cleared, Taylor emerged not only as an artist, but as a force of resilience. She had walked through fire and returned with a heart still open, still willing to give. What made her extraordinary wasn't just the music. It was the way she turned her scars into hope for others. Her concerts grew into more than performances. They became sanctuaries where thousands of voices blended into one, where fans who felt invisible suddenly felt seen. She noticed the handwritten signs in the crowd. "Your songs saved me. You gave me the strength to keep going." Sometimes she stopped mid-performance just to take it all in, the faces, the tears, the joy. For Taylor, that connection was worth more than any award. Offstage, she carried the same compassion. She quietly paid hospital bills for struggling families, donated millions to schools and disaster relief, and supported causes close to her heart. She visited sick children without cameras, holding their hands, singing softly at their bedsides. Many never knew about those moments because she didn't do them for headlines. She did them because she remembered being a little girl with a dream, and she wanted others to know dreams could come true even in the darkest times. Her journey also reshaped her understanding of power. For years, others had tried to control her art, her image, even her voice. When she finally took ownership of her music, re-recording her albums to reclaim what was hers, it wasn't just a business decision. It was a declaration. She was telling every young artist, you deserve to own your story. Never let anyone take it from you. And yet, the greatest proof of her strength came not in boardrooms or on charts, but in the quiet moments. Like when she knelt to hug a fan trembling with anxiety, whispering, "You're going to be okay." Or when she wrote letters to those who confided in her, reminding them they weren't alone. Taylor knew fame could build walls, but she chose to build bridges instead. Years after that little girl first strummed a guitar in Pennsylvania, Taylor had become more than a singer. She was a lifeline for millions, a reminder that vulnerability is not weakness but power. She showed the world that it's possible to be broken and still create beauty, to be betrayed and still love, to be silenced and still sing louder than ever. And so, as the lights dimmed after another sold-out show, Taylor stood backstage for a moment, her guitar resting at her side. She closed her eyes and thought of the rejections, the betrayals, the nights she nearly gave up. Then she thought of the voices that now filled stadiums, the lives her music had touched, and the little girl she used to be. She smiled, because she knew the truth. Dreams aren't easy, but they're worth every scar. Taylor Swift wasn't just a star. She was proof that even the most fragile voice, if it refuses to be silenced, can echo across the world and heal the hearts that need it most.